The morning began like any other, but by noon, Leela's world had quietly shattered. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the invitation that was never meant for her. The envelope had come in crisp ivory paper, the same shade as the wedding invites she had always imagined receiving, and yet it wasn't for her. Her mother's words still echoed in her mind, sharp and deliberate. "You'll only make your sister's wedding awkward. It's better if you don't come." The finality in her voice left no room for argument, no space for explanation. Leela had begged, pleaded even, citing the years of support, the countless times she had comforted her sister through heartbreaks and disappointments, the late nights spent helping with dress fittings and party plans, but it had been dismissed, a shrug, a statement delivered like verdict. Leela was unworthy of witnessing her sister's happiness firsthand. She felt her chest tighten. Her mother's face flashed before her, stern, unyielding, convinced she was protecting the wedding from her own daughter's presence. Leela's hands shook as she clutched the empty envelope. How could the woman who gave her life, who had promised unconditional love, treat her like she was a shadow to be hidden away? Tears blurred her vision as she imagined the day ahead. Her sister in a flowing white gown, radiant and laughing, while she sat alone at home, left out of every picture, every toast, every dance. She had always thought their bond was unbreakable. They had shared secrets, midnight whispers, dreams whispered into the dark. And now she was deemed an outsider in her own family's celebration. The anger began as a quiet hum in her stomach, but it grew quickly, twisting into something sharp and bitter. How dare they presume to judge her? How dare they assume she would ruin? A day meant for joy when all she had ever done was love her sister fiercely. For the first time in years, Leela felt invisible, not just overlooked, but deliberately erased. Memories flooded her mind, moments she had been there when no one else was, smiles she had hidden to comfort others, sacrifices made in silence. And now, all of it seemed meaningless to the people who should have known her heart best. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than any slight from a stranger, because it came from the people who should have known her soul. And yet, as the hurt festered, something else began to rise, a quiet, simmering resolve. If they wanted to write her off as awkward or undesirable, so be it. They had underestimated her, dismissed her, and yet they had no idea what she was capable of. Leela pressed her palms into her eyes, breathing through the sting of tears, letting the fire build in her chest. This was no longer about sadness. It was about reclaiming herself, proving her worth, and, if the universe allowed, a little sweet justice. She would be invisible, yes, but that invisibility would be her weapon. They had cast her aside, but they had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed that being left out meant she would do nothing. And Leela, silent and determined, vowed she would show them just how wrong they had been. Leela didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the quiet of her room amplifying every heartbeat, every thought. The anger and hurt from earlier had cooled into a steady, focused resolve. If her mother and sister thought excluding her meant she would fade quietly into the background, they had gravely underestimated her. For years, Leela had been the shadow, the quiet helper behind the curtain. She had organized school events, birthday parties, and family gatherings. She knew the nuances that made a celebration memorable, the little touches that left people enchanted without ever noticing why. And now, armed with that knowledge, she realized she could use it to her advantage. She would attend her sister's wedding, but in her own way, on her own terms. It started small. She began keeping tabs on the wedding details from a distance, the florist, the photographer, the catering company. Leela's keen eye noticed flaws no one else would. The table arrangements were bland, the lighting uneven, the music transitions awkward. A part of her heart ached knowing these were the moments her mother would take pride in. Yet she felt a flicker of excitement, imagining the subtle chaos she could orchestrate. She wasn't going to ruin the day. That wasn't her style. nor did she want vengeance born from cruelty. No, this was going to be clever, sweet, even revenge wrapped in artistry. Each small disruption would be invisible enough to avoid suspicion, but tangible enough to make her presence felt in the most unforgettable way. Leela began assembling her tools, a list of vendors, small insider tips, and ways to subtly manipulate events. A misplaced chair here, a slightly altered seating chart there, a bouquet swapped for a more striking arrangement. Nothing that would hurt anyone, yet enough to leave her mother and sister questioning the seamless perfection they thought they had meticulously planned. She imagined watching from the shadows, unseen, but all the while shaping the wedding in ways that only someone with her touch could. And perhaps, if luck favored her, her sister would experience moments of pure magic, moments that no one could trace back, but that Leela alone had orchestrated. She allowed herself a small, bitter smile. The irony was delicious. Her sister, who had been gleaming with excitement, would unknowingly be elevated by the very sister her mother deemed awkward. Leela's mind buzzed with possibilities. There were favors she could plant with caterers, musical cues subtly altered, hidden messages in decorations only she could recognize. Every plan required patience, precision, and patience, the same qualities her mother had claimed she lacked. By the end of the night, the anger had transformed into something else, purpose. Leela felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, fueled by a sense of agency that had been denied her for too long. She wasn't going to sit at home, sulking, while her sister's wedding passed her by. She would be there, in spirit if not in presence, orchestrating a performance her family would never forget. And as she finally allowed herself to drift into a restless sleep, a thought lingered in her mind, sharp and sweet. They had cast her aside, but she would make them remember her. Not with shame, not with cruelty, but with brilliance they could neither anticipate nor control. This wedding, the one she was forbidden from attending, would bear her mark, and when they realized it, they would know exactly what they had lost. The morning of the wedding arrived bright and flawless, the kind of day that demanded perfection. Sunlight spilled across manicured lawns, flowers glowed in the gentle breeze, and every detail her mother had obsessively planned gleamed with careful precision. Leela, hidden from view, watched from a distance, heart pounding with a mixture of longing and anticipation. She wasn't supposed to be there. She had been deliberately excluded, erased from the family's happiest day. But standing in the shadows, she felt a strange sense of power. She wasn't disrupting the joy recklessly. No, this was her artistry, her subtle signature woven into the very fabric of the celebration. Every flaw she introduced was carefully calculated, each tiny imperfection a quiet reminder that she existed, that she mattered. The first act of her quiet rebellion was almost imperceptible. The florist had placed a cluster of roses slightly off center on the sweetheart table. To the untrained eye, it was a small oversight. To Leela, it was perfection marred just enough to draw attention. Later, a carefully redirected tray of hors d'oeuvres led to a minor mix-up, causing a ripple of polite apologies and gentle confusion. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to unsettle her mother, who frantically tried to smooth over every detail. Leela watched her sister from afar, radiant and blissful, completely unaware of the invisible hand shaping her day. A pang of bittersweet emotion tugged at Leela's chest. She could have hated this moment, but instead she marveled at it. Every laugh, every tear of joy was enhanced in subtle ways by the sister who had been sidelined. Her vengeance was not in ruining the day. It was in reminding her mother and sister, without them knowing, that she was indispensable, creative, and extraordinary. She had planted tiny surprises for the guests, a forgotten favor subtly repositioned so it caught the eye at just the right moment. Music cues slightly shifted to highlight the laughter and clinking of glasses. Even the photographer, unknowingly following her adjustments, captured moments of spontaneous beauty that would later be remembered as the most magical parts of the wedding. Watching from her hidden vantage point, Leela felt a surge of satisfaction. Her mother's anxious glances, the subtle frowns of panic at minor disruptions, these were her silent victories. But they were paired with moments of beauty she alone had orchestrated. A child's delighted gasp at an unexpected flower, the way her sister's veil caught the sunlight perfectly in a photograph, gentle laughter of friends enjoying unplanned surprises. Her revenge was clever, sweet, and full of grace. And yet, despite her meticulous planning, her heart ached. She longed to be close enough to touch her sister's hand, to whisper congratulations, to witness the vows firsthand. But that was precisely why this dance of invisibility was so potent. They had tried to erase her, but even unseen, she shaped the day. Her presence, though hidden, was undeniable. As the ceremony drew to its peak, the vows exchanged, the first kiss. The full weight of her effort settled in her chest. They had cast her out, told her she didn't belong, yet here she was, orchestrating perfection from the shadows. A quiet smile curved her lips. They thought they were celebrating a flawless day, but every subtle flourish, every beautiful imperfection, bore her mark. And in that quiet triumph, Leela realized the sweetest revenge of all. She had transformed her pain into power, invisibility into artistry, and exclusion into undeniable presence. The reception buzzed with laughter and music, a picture of perfection from the outside. But for Leela, hidden behind the edges of the crowd, the satisfaction she felt was far more complex than joy alone. Every misaligned table, every perfectly timed surprise she had orchestrated, was now playing out exactly as she had intended. Her revenge had been quiet, invisible, elegant, and it was working. She watched her mother move among the guests, eyes flickering nervously toward every little mishap. A slightly crooked centerpiece here, a misplaced napkin there, her mother's brows furrowed, her hands fluttering in silent frustration. Leela's heart swelled with the bitter sweetness of it all. The woman who had dismissed her as awkward, who had claimed she would ruin the wedding, was now unsettled, powerless to trace the invisible hand guiding these small disruptions. And then came the moment she had been waiting for, her sister's reaction. Leela had ensured that the most magical touches, the glowing flowers, the perfect photograph angles, the small notes of encouragement tucked into place, landed where her sister could see them without realizing who was responsible. The bride's laughter rang out, bright and joyous, as she noticed the subtle wonders of the day. Leela's chest tightened. She wanted nothing more than to step forward, to reveal herself, but she held back. Her influence alone, unseen yet undeniable, was her triumph. A guest approached the bride, gushing about the little moments that had made the wedding so enchanting, the perfectly timed music cues, the unexpected joy in the smallest details. "Who thought of all this?" the guest asked. Her sister shook her head, puzzled, and Leela's lips curved into a quiet, victorious smile. She alone knew the answer. Her mother's gaze, meanwhile, darted nervously around the room. Leela could almost feel the realization building, the creeping awareness that something, or someone, had shaped this day in ways she had never imagined. The subtle chaos, the beautiful imperfections, the orchestrated moments of magic, all of it bore Leela's mark. And for the first time, her mother understood. She had underestimated her daughter, dismissed her presence, and overlooked the quiet brilliance that had always existed within her. When the night drew to a close and the last guests had departed, her sister lingered by the garden, sighing in contentment. "It was perfect," she whispered, "more perfect than I could have imagined." Leela watched, hidden in the shadows, and felt an ache of longing. But it was accompanied by something deeper, a sense of validation, of finally being seen, even if only indirectly. Her mother approached, hesitating, a mixture of guilt and awe in her expression. There were no words at first. just a silent acknowledgement that she had been wrong to exclude Leela. And though the confrontation never fully came, the subtle shift in their relationship was palpable. Leela had claimed her power not with anger or cruelty, but with intelligence, grace, and an unwavering sense of self-worth. For the first time in years, she felt whole. She had been erased, sidelined, dismissed, but in the shadows, she had left an indelible mark. They had thought they could prevent her from being part of this day, yet in every smile, every moment of unexpected joy, her presence was undeniable. As she walked away quietly, leaving the celebration behind, Leela carried with her the sweet, quiet triumph of the invisible becoming unforgettable. She had been overlooked, underestimated, and excluded, but now she knew her worth, and no one would ever forget it again.